Friends, welcome to Halfway There. This is Eric Nevins here. And before we get the show started, I want to invite you to get my free download. It's called What to Do When You're Mad at God. Listen, this happens to all of us at some point, whether you think it should or not, it does. And in fact, it happens all the time in Scripture. And so I wrote this free download for you on the basis of the book of Habakkuk. I know, when's the last time anybody read the book of Habakkuk? But it's his interaction with God is so cool. And I think it has something to say to us about how we move through anger, disappointment with God without losing our faith or getting stuck in the spiritual desert, because those are the things that can happen if we don't figure out a strategy to kind of come to God and deal with that. So this download gives you that strategy. You can pick it up at halfwaytherepodcast.com. Right at the very top, you'll find it, and just throw your email in there. And then I'll send you emails also every week whenever the show comes out, so that you'll know that that's going to, and a number of other great things that I've got in the works. So go ahead and get that. Again, halfwaytherepodcast.com. Can't wait to see you over there. Thanks a lot. Let's get the show started. Well, welcome, friends, to Halfway There. This is the show where we have honest conversations with ordinary Christians about today's Christian experience. And I'm excited to bring to you the conversation that we're about to have with my guest. She's the founder and host of her own podcast of Altered Stories Ministries. And just been spending a few minutes here getting to know her. I think you're going to like her as well. Please welcome to the show, Mischelle Saunders-Gottsch. Mischelle, welcome to Halfway There.
Thank you, Eric. I'm so excited to be here this morning with you and looking forward to sharing the glory story that I have of who Jesus Christ is in my life, and also more about what he's doing in terms of moving in me, and also a little bit about the great things he's doing in Altered Stories Ministry.
Yeah, I think that's a great name, and I know that you have a great vision. I can't wait to hear a little bit about that. We've been connected for a little while, and I know we know some of the same people, which is wonderful. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing now?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I'm a wife, a mom, an aunt. I'm blessed to also be a member of the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection here in Olathe, Kansas. I'm a friend, and I love dogs. I have a little schnauzer named Bella, and my husband and I are empty nesters, and we have a daughter, a grown daughter. She is executive director for the Muscular Dystrophy Association here in the Overland Park area. Anyway, so what God is doing in my life now has been a journey of transformation and change. And I, through this journey, have learned so much about who I am, and leaning into who he is, and a walk of faith. And as you mentioned, I'm in the process of the launch of Altered Stories Ministry, and it is a ministry where we help women share their amazing God stories, testimonies, so women that need to hear them can hear them. And I had that call in my life for some time to do this. I started out as a broadcast journalist major early on, kind of deviated from that and moved into the business side, but felt God's call definitely in my life to begin moving forward in providing a platform for women to share their stories while at Compassion International. So a lot going on. Right now, I'm officing at Office Evolution in Overland Park and trying to get this ministry launched.
Oh, yeah, that's great. It sounds like a really, really cool vision. How'd you come up with Altered Stories?
You know, I was so blessed. I worked at Focus on the Family for a short period of time. And during that time, I interacted with their broadcasting group. Amazing group, very professional people. They do amazing broadcasts through, John and Jim Daly, who's their president. But fortunately, I was able to sit down with them, and I met them, their team. And when they knew of this vision that I had, they wanted to support it. And so what they did is, they gave me names and all kinds of insight into how to be successful in this type of ministry. And there's a wonderful woman there, Christine Beebe. She was really helpful, and she started vetting with her team. Their team, they're really gifted and creative in coming up with names. And so they gave me a few names, and I vetted them with my potential supporters and listeners, and we came up with the name Altered Stories. And I went to a trademark attorney, started looking all over to see if there were other ministries out there with that name, and the closest I could find was Altered State, which is a Christian clothing store here in Overland Park.
That's
believe
interesting.
it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, really cool. Yeah, I think it has kind of an epic sound to it, which is awesome. That's cool.
No, thank you. It's definitely been received well.
Yeah, that's good. Well, all right. Well, let's go dig into your story a little bit. I know that as a kid, you were a military kid, a military family. Tell us just a little bit about how you came to Christ.
Sure. I was blessed to go to a little Christian church in Providence, Rhode Island, where my mom was born and raised. And while my dad was serving in Vietnam, my mom moved back there, and we started attending this Christian Missionary Alliance church there in Providence, and became friends with the pastor and his children. And I was going to Sunday school and received Jesus Christ through my Sunday school teacher there at the Missionary Alliance Church.
You had an interesting experience in Sunday school where you learned about your leadership gifting. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. I was able to read very young, and I had such an interest in reading the Bible. And my Sunday school teacher saw that, and I'm an achieving personality, and she captivated that, and started rewarding, me for certain memories, scripture memorization and everything. And I won awards. And, at that time, of course, she was sharing with me, and also my teacher, my actual first grade teacher, that they saw gifts and leadership gifts. And, we're able to, even at that time, put me in situations that would help me shine.
So tell us a little bit about how you learned, like some of your early experiences learning about Jesus and about kind of what this meant for your life.
Okay. Well, my mom found Jesus Christ through the Billy Graham Crusade. She was a Catholic, and converted to Christianity, and was very hungry to build her relationship with Jesus through, the church. And of course, she exposed me to Sunday school. And, of course, there I had, like we had talked about the influence of the teachers. Also, she was big on Billy Graham crusades and watched them all the time.
That's
And
so
then, yeah, oh, yeah. So, I grew up with Billy Graham, like he was my pastor.
Oh yeah.
They say he's America's pastor.
Uh-huh.
Well, he really was. I can tell you other great stories about that later. But anyway, so the Sunday school teacher was a high influence, and of course, the pastor was a high influence when I was younger. And then, as my mom, continued to attend church, there were people that God put in my life, and even other friends, that were brought in to my, family, that really did make a difference. And of course, reading the Bible and all that.
I know that as you were growing up, your life got a little bit more difficult. How did that affect you?
Well, you know,
Particularly your faith is what I wanted to know.
I think, at the time when our family was going through so much, it was hard for me to really believe that God loved me and that He loved my family and that God was a loving God, because the people that were then around me were people that were not very loving, and they were very imbalanced, and uh, there was just control that I saw. I didn't see love. And so, you know, that affected kind of my perception of Christianity and my faith for, a season, as my mom got deeper and deeper into this, cultish group of Christians and involvement there, and then the effects that had, and what came out of it. At that time, I didn't see Christianity in a positive light. I really disliked who Christians were.
Oh yeah.
So I just didn't see God loving at all.
Oh right. Yeah. So that can happen if the people who are supposed to be following God don't love other people, or they try to control them, then that kind of shapes how you see God as controlling and not loving.
Exactly. And, I'm newly Christian, forming my opinion and growing. But, so when you're not very mature in your faith, you just kind of look around to see what other people are doing, right? As a child. And you see this abuse, and you see, and people are so amazingly broken, but you don't have that concept without Christ,
Yeah.
So, it's just unfortunate, but God turned it. So
yeah,
that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Well, it's so interesting how when you're young, I think what you said was, yeah, well, we just kind of look around and see what people are doing, and you sort of assume that that's how life should be, and and that's not necessarily how that should be. And we don't know that. I've been thinking about that lately. About I have 4 kids, and especially my younger ones, but even the older ones do this, and I think we all do it, where they're trying to explain something that they don't understand, and they come up with the funniest connections, with like so as you know, I recently left my job. Like, just as an example, my youngest son said, well, Dad, you don't have to go to work today, so you can just do whatever you want, right? So just because I don't have a boss somewhere doesn't mean I don't have to do anything here. And so he made that assumption. He tried to connect some dots that didn't make sense. I think we do that as in our spiritual life with God as well sometimes.
We absolutely do.
Yeah, and sometimes it's interesting how that works out, and can be kind of damaging.
Yes, it can be, because we want to put God in our box sometimes. But again, it's your maturity process. It's how in tune you are, and people are in a different journey.
Absolutely.
In their faith, everyone is different. So it's very personal. That is for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that's part of the premise of this whole show, is that, hey, every journey is different. And instead of, it's not just, hey, my life was bad and I found Jesus and now it's good. There's a lot more to that journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
great work you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, have you ever had a time when God felt far away or distant since you came to Christ?
Yes. I think I've had peaks and valleys of that throughout my Christian walk. I rebelled against God when I was in my early teen years, and due to the consequences of that rebellion, that didn't put me in a good place with God. And, just certain times when, through my own actions, that I brought in sin and separation from God. And so, I will say, sometimes God also tests us, and He knows how to encourage, and He knows how to test, and He knows how to refine us. So yeah, there's been, of course, when I was believing, I kind of ventured off into my own in my late 20s and, thought I was all that. And, I was all caught up in materialism and me being God,
Uh-huh.
I'm about me and I'm God, you know, and it's all about me. And I don't need Christians and I don't need the faith thing. It's all weak kind of thing, and, part of that, um, was a journey of my own and separation of my own from God. But, God knew what he needed to do to humble me. But even then, and, when you're walking with God, as you say, um, there can be times when God just says, look, I'm going to test you a little through these waters. And sometimes you can feel quite alone and feel like maybe God's not listening to you,
Yeah.
And I have found that in those seasons, God always brings amazing people to encourage me through those seasons or those times, or, whether it's my husband or whether it's, he'll even speak through my daughter, say a word, or there'll be, friends and dear friends who I've known a long time who pray with me.
Yeah. Well, so
And, they'll walk me through that.
was there a time? So, like, how did God bring you out of that time? So it sounds like you kind of walked away from your faith in some sense, maybe not totally. But then how'd you come back? What happened?
Yeah. Well, um, one story of that was through a very difficult divorce.
Hmm.
I unfortunately had been married, was pregnant with my daughter, and at the time, my husband that I was married to had made a choice to leave the relationship, and I was on my own with no job. I was on my own to raise my daughter, and I had to draw on my faith. Unfortunately, sometimes people have to hit bottom to come up, or, that
Hmm.
those are situations where they see that, they can't control it all. There is someone bigger. And so, that is kind of what turned me around. But actually prior to that, I even felt a call to the church. I think it was thinking about being a mom,
Mm.
and I started going to a church in Walnut Creek, California, and we had friends and they were growing in their faith. And I think just about that time I was going into Sunday school thinking too. And of course, then the marriage ended. But I think the Holy Spirit was drawing me back. Um, and this is how I was, being drawn back. But then God knew what was ahead. And so,
Mm.
he brought just my parents to be there, my former husband's parents. He brought great pastors and great people to support me. And he, a job, and he put all the pieces together. And, a mutual friend who's my dear friend today here in Olathe, going through a similar situation, and having to face raising a child on her own, on my own, and what that future looked like is a scary thing. But, God drew me that way, and he was so there. He was like my husband, just all those things to help me through, and, I grew more in my faith and, in my journey as a Christian. God brought me back into the fold and brought in healthy Christians,
Yeah.
wonderful, loving, godly people there in the Denver area to really encourage my faith, and had, brought in mentors, and even an amazing woman who wanted me to be part of her ministry. It's called the Covenant House of Love there in the Denver area. And then my friend Diane Andrews, who has R&R Retreat Ministries. God brought these women to encourage my faith and, to help me heal and to get me through, So,
Yeah.
God's so faithful.
I think that's so interesting because a lot of times when we're looking for experiences of God and when I'm wanting to hear about that, so many times it's the community that God brings around you during those difficult times that is really the way that he's present with you.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's been my case very much. I mean, I see it here in Overland Park. I see the amazing people that God is putting in my life to help me raise up our small group and the support of the women in the group. And then our support from our pastor here in Olathe, Pastor Jason. And then, the amazing women, the women in our group. In our Saturday morning women's group, and then Office Evolution. These women, the husband and wife, Aaron and Ryan, who run this. It's like a ministry, but they're all willing to step up and help me succeed. Just the Kansas City community is just amazing in that way too. So when God's in it, He'll bring the people to you.
Yeah,
and of course, someone like yourself who's helping me today, and others that are willing to interview me or help me promote what I'm doing in the ministry of Altered Stories. So
yeah, absolutely.
God is so faithful.
Yeah. What'd you learn about yourself through that process?
Oh man, I've learned that I am a person that really needs others' encouragement at times. I've learned that through prayer and through the word and through seeking God, that He shows up.
Yeah,
God shows up.
What does that look like for you? Just prayer and reading the word and seeking Him.
Well, it looks like to me every day. I spend time in prayer throughout the day. I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ in my life. I also, of course, go to church. I fellowship with the community of believers. I read, the Bible. I do. Our church has given you so many tools to be able to do devotions every day. They have an online. It's a GPS, which is really cool. That you can read every day and get scriptures. There's a lot of that. It's taking time to be alone with God. The mindset and just. It's a relationship. I mean, it's something that's nourished. My husband and I pray every night. We do devotion, Psalm devotion too. And
that's cool.
It's just, being a part of who I am. It's sharing it, faith, through Altered Stories, my faith, and, sharing Jesus Christ with women that are hurting and in need. And God has given me so many opportunities to do that just in person or even through my podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Pretty amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm definitely a big fan of podcasts, and so I've listened to a little bit of a couple of your interviews, and you do a good job. They're really good, and they definitely share that kind of transition and that change story.
Well, thank you. I was blessed. The woman that's been helping me produce is just an amazing woman. She's Pensador Productions, and she's very gifted. And she's given me some coaching and kind of helping me along too. But she did a lot of the producing of Dr. James Dobson's, radio show, and she has done her own. And she's, I've been blessed that God put the right people at the right time in my life.
Oh yeah.
So I feel God, God, when God's in it, he's going to bring those people alongside you.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So that's that focus on the family connection coming back and helping out.
Yeah. Even though it was a short time I was there, boy, I know there was a reason and a purpose for my work there.
You worked at Compassion too for a while.
I did for almost 5 years.
So tell me a little bit about that.
I was blessed to be able to start working in, today it's their global marketing and global leadership office area, but they've kind of made a lot of changes. I started out in a division. It was called USA, but it was the primary, the core of all their, sponsors, donors, revenue, all the marketing, sales, serving, the call center, all those groups within Compassion as a business project services manager. So I was brought in to work in a group and help lead project managers and business analysts. And then I was asked to help them build out their project management office as they were maturing and growing in what they were doing in their initiatives. And so I was fortunate to do that too. And then along the way, partner with a lot of their other group areas, and even got involved with their huge transformational project that is since implemented across the world. So, and then traveled, met my sponsor child, learned a whole lot about missions ministry, learned a lot about how to build out an organization, all the infrastructure, and then was involved in their Women at Compassion and helped coach some of the women that we brought in as speakers, and also helped facilitate these sessions that we would do for the women, and we streamed them. And that's kind of where I was blessed to come up with vision and the platform. And God really showed me, this is where I want you. This is where I want you to put your gifts for me, and this is where the vision came in of Altered Stories. And it's just, it's been evolving.
Oh, yeah.
That is for sure. So being at Office Evolution is really, I'm going to evolve. This is evolving.
Yeah, interesting. Well, part of your story that you'd kind of share with me earlier is embracing yourself as a leader. Would you say that's true?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about, like, because I hear that in what you did there at Compassion, but tell us, can you just give us the broad strokes of how you've done that, and how that was, maybe not where you were headed, and how God's kind of used that to bring you into this vision?
Sure. Well, the start of my understanding of my gifts as a leader started in first grade, when the teacher felt I had leadership gifts and would let me, watch the class for her when she stepped out. And, I didn't know that much about leadership. Of course, at that time, all I knew is I liked being the one that was the center of attention.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Or being the one in control. And I learned a hard lesson with that, because I had high standards and expectations of myself, and then of course of others. And that, that will always cause me a little consternation. But regardless, God used me in the leadership roles that He, put me in. And a lot of it was something I never really sought after, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
When I first was promoted into leadership, I was working there in the Denver area, and I was working in a call center. And, all I thought about was the people. All I thought about is, I want to love on the people, and I want to get them to work together. I want to bring them into unity, and I want us to shine. And an amazing woman by the name of Kathleen Suchek there in the Denver community saw that gift and said, I'm leaving, and guess who I'm going to recommend for my job? And she said, you. And I was shocked. Personally, I thought I had to have everything in line, every kind of perfection, every kind of degree, pedigree. And you know what? God said, no, you're going to take this job. And it was an overwhelming, but I always loved on people and seeing, wanting the best for them has really always been my heart. So, through that transition, and then, in flourishing in those roles, that was blessed to be in leading others. It was always, no matter where I would go, even if I started out as an individual contributor, I would be moved into some type of leadership role because it was just my natural ability, to lead others. It wasn't, it's not an ego thing. It's not a pride thing or anything. It was just, that's who I am.
Uh-huh.
And so trying to, take people and help them and develop them and make them, support them and, serve them. That's the impetus of why, I believe God has moved me and transformed me, and he sees my heart, not for just him, but also for those and wanting to help those that need help and support and to give back in so many ways. And so, leader transformation. I mean, I've gone through every kind of leadership training in the Willow Creek Summit. I mean, I've been blessed beyond blessed to have incredible mentors, women, strong women leaders that have come across my path and, just are amazing. And then, of course, through the Willow Creek Summit and just the amazing stories of women leaders and just, learnings, whether, and men, Andy Stanton, like you said, I've heard Bill Hybels was, always, very gifted in that. And also, bringing in Jim Collins and there's emotional intelligence. I think Travis Davis is his name. And, I hope I'm saying that correctly. But there's, every time John Maxwell, Sheryl Sandberg with
Sure.
Facebook, these are all amazing leaders. And then, of course, Beth Moore, Beth Moore in my learnings of her and her ministry and what she's done and through the teaching of her Bible studies. And anyway, so many different people that I can't even give credit. There's just so many that I've been blessed with and God has brought to me, or, I've learned from. Tom Peters is one in secular, and, they're just all many.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have always been concerned about the people, which I think is the first lesson of leadership, right?
Yes, I believe so. I've always seen people, my success as a leader has always come through people. I mean, even where I'm at with Altered Stories Ministry, without the women like Sandy Williams and Lexi Voorhees who are helping me, and the other, volunteers that I've had, and then also, my former spiritual mentors who've launched 2 nonprofits, and then, the women that God has brought to me that have learnings in this area, someone like yourself. I mean, it's just, it's to me, it's all about others helping you succeed too. You can't do it all.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I've led teams, if it wasn't for the teams of people that were under my leadership, or I was blessed to work with and come alongside with to do what we needed, our work, that's how I've been successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you've been successful at every level of your life. Just by using those leadership gifts.
I believe that, yes. And doing the right thing and putting God on the throne.
Yeah, absolutely.
That God is centered and doing that. I mean, I've had definitely, growth. I've had growth areas, and, I've had to learn some things along the way there. And I'm working through that.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned?
I've learned that you have to be careful how you speak and your tone, and not everybody receives what you say the same way. So, there's a lot of, you have to be careful about how you say things.
Yeah.
And early on when I had that little girl that didn't color in the lines in class the way that I liked, and I said, "That's ugly," and I pulled her paper and she cried. That was not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And I had to learn from that. And I've had to learn through leading others too, that I have to be mindful of each person and how they receive communication and their sensitivity, all those things. Words can really sting. So not just actions, but you've got to be careful in how you talk with others.
Yeah, I learned that one the hard way pretty much every day. So I get it.
Yeah, people just are, very sensitive. So high emotional intelligence, you have to work on that, but you've got to be, not so much care about what people think all the time or anything like that, but you've got to, people have said to me, you sometimes think too much of what you want other people's approval. That's not true. I want to make sure that I don't hurt the person. I want to be mindful of each person. I do treat each person that God's blessed me to come in contact with as there's someone special.
Yeah.
And I want to respect them. You've got to learn to respect people. So learning how to respect others is huge.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. Okay, well, I want to hear a little bit more about what you're wanting to do with Altered Stories. And you've talked about this a little bit, but take us into that. I know you want to, the podcast is a platform for women to share their stories with God. But so tell us a lot more about that.
Okay, great. Well, so, what I am hoping is to be able to refine what we're doing in terms of being able to broadcast across the world. I want to be able to have the technology in place. I want to have the download of the podcast, maybe even get to a place of where every day I'm bringing on like more of a show format where we're bringing on, guests. I want to refine it more there. I want to be able to, also eventually, get some products out there, that can market the ministry, so, we can continue to share the glory story. I'm working on right now, just getting, the board more formalized, getting, our social media intact where we have more of a presence on a regular basis, but truly that, the nonprofit establishment is huge. Yeah. And once we get that in place, we can start. So it's my hope that I'll be able to raise the funds that's needed to be able to do what I need to do by launching this by late summer. And that's kind of what my thoughts are. But then my vision, of course, is to be able to maybe even be picked up on a radio show segment, just continuing to share the Jesus Christ and who he is, and to bring people, women, although I know there are men interested in hearing my podcast, into a deeper relationship or into a relationship with Jesus Christ. And part of that too is that women, when they're healed, they can be better in their marriages. They can be better in their community. They can be better as mothers. You hear that story, when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
That's true in my house.
Yeah. So, the role of women, I want to restore it. I want women that, my vision is, I see, that, I don't know if my logo shows an altered story, but it shows the daughter of the king. I was blessed to have this logo that was painted by one of my dear friends there in Colorado, her daughter, Olivia Alba. She made this, and I just feel like it was just inspired. But to see, the transformation and see, the victory of being a daughter of the King, and being completely brought into wholeness and healthiness like God did in my life through my background and how he showed up and brought me back, and into being, whole. And I would consider, I'm not perfect, obviously, and have still a lot of growth, but that's my vision, to see that. And then that changes the world, that changes communities, that changes, and Jesus is the core. He's the hope. And that's my vision for that.
Yeah. So change women's lives in order to change the world.
Yeah. Help women heal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think now's the right time. There's definitely, what we've seen in the last year with some of the stuff going on in the media and huge figures finally being called into account for some of their behavior. I think the time is right to say, hey, there's the healing is not just in the exposure of wrongs, but it's in coming to Jesus and finding him.
Yeah, it's interesting. Relentless Women put a post out there that I shared, and it's called I Love God and I'm proud to say it. And then they have Me Too, hashtag Me Too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Me Too movement, is a movement of great controversy, and there's a lot of different perspectives out there. But the bottom line is we need to love others. As Christians, we need to love others. We need to learn to be what Jesus modeled
Yeah.
in terms of loving other people. And so, love God, loving others. I mean, you can't love without God's love, in my opinion,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
right way. I mean, this is just now we're talking from a Christian's perspective, so I just feel that strong about, showing the love of God, and we need to do that.
There's a lot to say, I think, about the Me Too thing. And I would love to see, this is what I like about what you want to do. I want to see more people say, uh, okay, yes, this happened, but there's grace, there's forgiveness, but we all need Jesus. We all need him. Whether you're healing from abuse or recovering as an abuser, I think those people need Jesus as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, Jesus came, he did not want any man to perish,
Yeah, absolutely.
and he came to be in the form of man to understand our issues and what we go through. And so, I just, through my experiences, I've seen how God is just, and through his son, how he's made such a difference in my life and the healing and the transformation. And, from someone who didn't want anything to do with Christians to today working on the launch of a podcast ministry to share who Jesus is and to help women heal across the world. That's a transformation. That's God. It can only be, because I wouldn't say I was almost an atheist, but I was darn close
Yeah.
at one time. So I'm just grateful that I can share who he is, and I feel called to doing that. And there's brokenness, but God redeems, restores, and I believe, that's what he's called me to do, is share what he
Yeah.
does.
Amen. Well, people can find you at alteredstories.org.
Yes.
And if you're interested, friends, in being involved or contacting Mischelle, go there. But she's still looking for donors and for volunteers. And you're putting together a board, which I think is really interesting, to kind of manage that. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're looking for?
Well, right now I've got a social media manager that I'm looking for. The details are on the website. Thank you, Eric, by the way, for sharing that. And, I just need also, we've got a board secretary opportunity, and I have the details of that too, but really somebody that can come in and help us chair the board, and they'll do the minutes, and, would be willing to help us pull together some processes and, make sure that all the documents are prepped and stored in a good place, and that the minutes are recorded and everything, to be able to sustain. I want to build a healthy nonprofit. That's the other thing. It's really important to me. I do it right, do it well, bring the right people in to help do that well. And so somebody that's maybe had experience being a board secretary would be great, but not necessary. Obviously you have a heart for women and women's ministry and serving, all those things.
Yeah.
Social media manager, people, I really need someone who understands how to do Twitter well, how to do, Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and getting some continuity out there, of what we're doing too. Has got a marketing bent, although I'm doing a lot of it. I just not pure marketing. I can do my best.
Right.
But those are key. And then, of course, I'm hoping to get some fundraising going on here. And like I said, through Office Evolution here in Overland Park, there's so many networking events. I'm meeting great people. And,
yeah,
that's good.
Well, I wanted to mention that because you never know if somebody out there, one of our friends is listening and it just resonates with the message that you have and they want to reach out to you. We'll see what happens. Maybe God will do that. Or, there's people who, the problem in the world isn't the lack of money. The problem is getting people to give you money. So it always helps to just ask and say, hey.
Yes, and that feel called to give you money.
Absolutely.
But like I said, we're trying to sustain, our revenue. We're trying to find ways to sustain revenue. Donations, obviously, where God calls people, he calls you, he'll bring it to you. I respect that. But I also know that, we have to be proactive, and there are things God wants us to do and take action. But I do believe
amen.
Also that there's things that we can do in terms of, people willing to do a little fundraising, or, I've got a GoFundMe campaign out there. If, people feel called to that, it's out there and it's on our website. So that's another way of doing that too.
All right. So alteredstories.org, friends, if this is something you're interested in being more involved in, or you want to connect with Mischelle, you can find her there. Mischelle, anything else you want to leave us with?
Yeah, just, I would say his story, his glory. That's the way it is. As I see what he is doing, not only in your life and in many Christians' life, being able to radiate God's love in our life and, to put him on the throne for his glory is really, Billy Graham said, he knew a lot of people started ministries, but it was always about them, some. And I would say that Billy Graham hit the nail right on the head. It's not about us. It's about God and his glory. So to God be the glory here.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks a lot for being here. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to see what God's going to do with this and also what he's doing in your life and with your podcast.